The shift in media tone didn't happen overnight. For a long time, analysts and league insiders avoided putting too much credit on one player. The narrative was always about overall growth, momentum, and the league finally getting respect. But now, with viewership sliding and excitement cooling off, that story is starting to crack. According to recent reports and analyst breakdowns, outlets like Yahoo Sports have begun openly acknowledging what fans have been saying for months. Caitlin Clark's presence directly moved the needle. When she was playing, games were pulling massive numbers. When she wasn't, those same numbers dropped sharply. And once Unrivaled launched its new season without her involved, the contrast became impossible to ignore. What makes this even more interesting is how quickly the conversation changed. The same media voices that once pushed back against the one-player effect are now calling it an uncomfortable truth. Not because they want to, but because the data is forcing their hand. And this isn't about disrespecting other players. It's about recognizing how sports entertainment actually works. Casual fans don't tune in for balance sheets. They tune in for stars. They tune in for storylines. They tune in for moments that feel bigger than the game itself. That's exactly what Clark brought. Her shooting range, confidence, and viral highlights didn't just attract hardcore basketball fans. They pulled in people who normally wouldn't watch women's basketball at all. And when that magnet disappeared, so did a big portion of the audience. Now leagues like Unrivaled are feeling that absence in real time. Lower viewership means less buzz. Less buzz means weaker sponsorship interest. And weaker sponsorships put pressure on broadcast partners who expected stronger returns. That's why this situation feels different from a normal ratings dip. It's not just a slow season. It's a reality check. Because for the first time, the industry is being forced to admit that star power still matters more than branding slogans and social media campaigns. And once that door opens, it raises even bigger questions about how Unrivaled marketed its launch, and whether that strategy actually backfired in the worst possible way. This is where Unrivaled's biggest mistake may have happened. Leading up to the season, the league dropped a series of cryptic promotional posts that instantly caught fans' attention. The number 22 kept appearing. Teasers referenced 22 minutes. Visuals hinted at something major coming. And almost immediately, social media started buzzing. Fans speculated that Caitlin Clark might be joining. Others thought Angel Reese could be involved. Some believed both were about to be announced. Now, to be clear, Unrivaled never officially confirmed any of this, but reports claim the marketing strategy intentionally leaned into the speculation without shutting it down. And that's where the backlash started brewing. Because when the announcement finally arrived, neither superstar was part of the league. What followed was disappointment, not just from hardcore fans, but from casual viewers who had been pulled in by the hype. Analysts later described it as a bait-and-switch moment, not illegal, not deceptive on paper, but damaging to trust. And trust is everything when you're building a new league. Instead of starting the season with momentum, Unrivaled entered opening week dealing with skepticism. People who had planned to tune in suddenly lost interest. Online conversations shifted from excitement to criticism, and the energy that should have carried into tip-off just wasn't there. That marketing misfire didn't just hurt emotionally. It hurt strategically. Because Unrivaled's entire model relies on creating urgency. Short seasons, fast-paced games, star-driven appeal. When fans feel misled, that urgency disappears. And here's the worst part. The timing couldn't have been worse. This happened right as the WNBA started increasing salaries and offering more off-season financial opportunities. Suddenly, Unrivaled's biggest selling point, money, didn't feel as exclusive anymore. So now the league is facing pressure from both sides. Disappointed fans on one end, and stronger competition on the other. And once opening weekend arrived, the results made it painfully clear that this wasn't just an online controversy. It was showing up in the stands and on the ratings charts. And that's when the alarm bells really started ringing. Opening weekend was supposed to be Unrivaled's big statement moment. Fresh season, new storylines, high expectations. But instead of packed arenas and viral highlights, what people noticed first were the empty seats. Reports and fan footage circulating online showed noticeable gaps throughout the crowd. Ticket resale prices dropped fast. Entire sections were going unsold. And while the league tried to frame it as early season adjustments, analysts weren't buying it. Because the numbers told a different story. Viewership for the new season came in well below expectations. Compared to the early buzz Unrivaled generated during its launch year, the drop was hard to ignore. And once those figures started spreading, the narrative shifted quickly. What made this hit even harder was the contrast. Just months earlier, women's basketball was riding one of its biggest waves of attention ever. WNBA games were breaking viewership records. Social media engagement was exploding. Merchandise sales were climbing. But now, with Caitlin Clark not involved and Unrivaled struggling to create a must-watch draw, that momentum slowed down fast. And this wasn't just about one bad weekend. Analysts started warning that this looked like a pattern. Lower attendance leads to weaker atmosphere. Weaker atmosphere leads to less viral content. Less viral content means fewer casual viewers tuning in. And once that cycle starts, it's hard to reverse without a major catalyst. That's why so many people began calling this a reality check moment. Not because Unrivaled failed completely, but because it exposed the limits of hype without star power. You can build a sleek brand. You can promote innovation. You can sell a fresh format. But at the end of the day, fans tune in for faces they recognize and players they emotionally invest in. And right now, Unrivaled is struggling to create that connection on a large scale. But here's the scary part. This exact pattern has happened before. Other leagues tried to launch with big energy, only to watch interest fade once the novelty wore off. And the most famous example of that, it happened in the 3-on-3 basketball world. And it's starting to look uncomfortably familiar. When analysts started comparing Unrivaled's situation to Ice Cube's Big 3 league, a lot of people brushed it off at first. But the more you look at the numbers, the more uncomfortable that comparison becomes. The Big 3 launched with massive hype. Former NBA stars, packed arenas, strong TV ratings, social media buzz everywhere. It felt like a guaranteed long-term success story. But fast forward a few seasons and the excitement cooled off fast. Viewership dropped, attendance dipped, and once the novelty wore off, the league struggled to keep casual fans locked in. And that's the exact warning sign Unrivaled is now facing. Because star-driven leagues live and die by momentum. When there's fresh talent, recognizable names, and viral moments, people tune in. But once that initial excitement fades and no new breakout stars emerge, the audience starts drifting away. Reports suggest Unrivaled is already experiencing that early fatigue effect. Season 1 benefited from curiosity. Fans wanted to see the format. They wanted to test something new. But Season 2 requires loyalty, not curiosity. And loyalty is much harder to earn without a true headliner pulling people back week after week. That's where Caitlin Clark's absence becomes impossible to ignore again. She wasn't just a player. She was a magnet. The type of athlete who creates must-watch television, even for people who don't normally follow the sport. That's what separates viral stars from great players. And without that magnet effect, Unrivaled is being forced to rely purely on the format itself. And history shows that rarely works long-term. The Big 3 tried adjusting schedules, changing rules, adding new talent. But once the star pull weakened, the audience never fully recovered. Now Unrivaled is facing that same risk, only earlier in its lifespan. That's why business analysts are starting to sound alarms. Because this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about sustainability. It's about whether Unrivaled can survive beyond the early hype phase. And the most dangerous part, they don't have unlimited time to figure it out. Because sitting quietly in the background is a broadcast deal with a ticking clock. And once you understand how that contract is structured, you'll see why Unrivaled's situation just became even more serious. This is where Unrivaled's situation stops being just a basketball problem and turns into a business emergency. Because behind all the headlines about empty seats and falling viewership is one major factor most fans aren't paying attention to: the broadcast deal. Reports indicate that Unrivaled signed a multi-year agreement with TNT and True TV that includes a built-in opt-out clause after the first few seasons. And that clause changes everything. It means the network isn't locked in forever. If the numbers don't justify the investment, they can walk away. And networks don't operate on vibes. They operate on ratings, ad revenue, return on investment. If a product isn't performing, it gets cut. Simple as that. That's why analysts are starting to view Unrivaled's declining numbers as more than just a rough patch. Because if viewership doesn't rebound soon, the league risks losing its biggest distribution platform. And once that happens, everything becomes harder. Sponsors hesitate. Marketing budgets shrink. Player interest cools off. And visibility drops overnight. Some reports even suggest that internal conversations are already happening about what Unrivaled's future could look like if TNT decides not to continue. There's speculation that the league could be forced to pivot towards streaming platforms, social media broadcasts, or digital-only deals just to stay alive. Now again, none of this is officially confirmed. But the fact that this conversation is happening at all tells you how serious the situation has become. And it doesn't help that even appearances from big-name college stars haven't moved the needle the way people expected. When Paige Bueckers appeared, the ratings bump was modest at best. That was supposed to be a momentum moment. Instead, it exposed how hard it is to replace true mainstream star power. Which brings the conversation right back to Caitlin Clark. Because when she was active, networks didn't have to guess. The numbers spoke for themselves. Now Unrivaled is trying to prove it can survive without that level of draw. And so far, the results aren't inspiring confidence, which raises the biggest question of all. If the league can't stabilize its audience soon, what happens when the business side decides it's no longer worth the risk? What's happening to Unrivaled doesn't exist in a vacuum. The same pattern has quietly shown up in the WNBA itself, and that's what makes this conversation even more uncomfortable. During Caitlin Clark's rookie surge, league viewership hit record highs. Multiple games crossed the million-viewer mark. National broadcasts pulled in numbers women's basketball hadn't seen in years. Social media engagement exploded. Merchandise sales spiked. Everything pointed upward at once. But once Clark was sidelined and no longer consistently on the court, the drop was immediate. Reports showed average viewership sliding significantly. Some nationally televised games lost hundreds of thousands of viewers compared to earlier in the season. And while injuries, scheduling, and competition all play roles, analysts couldn't ignore the timing. When Clark wasn't available, the audience shrank. That doesn't mean fans disappeared completely. Core supporters stayed loyal, but casual viewers, the people who drive big broadcast numbers, moved on quickly. And that's the group leagues depend on most for growth. This is why the one-player effect argument keeps resurfacing. For years, media voices pushed the idea that women's basketball was growing purely because of collective talent and improved marketing. And while those factors helped, Clark's presence accelerated everything. She didn't just add viewers, she multiplied attention. Her deep shooting range, her viral highlights, her confidence and swagger. Those moments crossed over into mainstream sports culture. They were shared by accounts that don't normally cover women's basketball at all. That's rare. And now that she's not part of Unrivaled and hasn't been consistently active in WNBA broadcasts, both leagues are feeling the gap. This isn't about credit or blame. It's about market reality. Sports leagues are entertainment products, and entertainment thrives on stars who feel larger than the game itself. Without that type of draw, growth becomes slower, harder, and more fragile. Which is why Unrivaled's struggle isn't just their problem. It's a warning sign for the entire ecosystem. Because if women's basketball can't consistently create and elevate breakout superstars, the momentum everyone celebrated might not be as stable as it looked. And that leads directly to the most uncomfortable truth of all. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, but the numbers keep forcing the conversation. Star power still runs sports, no matter how much people want to believe it's all about the product or the league brand. History shows the same pattern over and over again. Fans follow faces. They follow personalities. They follow storylines that feel bigger than the scoreboard. And Caitlin Clark became that figure for women's basketball almost overnight. That doesn't mean other players aren't talented. It doesn't mean the league lacks skill. It means that one breakout star managed to pull casual viewers into a space they weren't regularly watching before. That's rare. And when it happens, the impact is massive. For a long time, players and media voices pushed back against this idea. Some even said it was disrespectful to suggest that one person mattered more than the collective. But now, with Unrivaled struggling and WNBA numbers sliding without Clark's consistent presence, the conversation is changing. Not because people suddenly want to credit one player, but because the data leaves very little room for denial. This is also where business reality kicks in. Sponsors invest in eyeballs. Networks invest in ratings. And leagues survive on attention. If that attention is tied heavily to one superstar, then losing that superstar, even temporarily, exposes a fragile foundation. That's exactly what Unrivaled is experiencing right now. They built a league around innovation and opportunity, but without a true mainstream draw, the casual audience hasn't stayed. And now they're facing a harsh question. Do they double down on developing the next breakout star? Do they try to rebuild momentum through marketing alone? Or do they accept that the current model may not be enough? Because pretending the issue doesn't exist won't fix it. Ignoring star power won't make ratings rise. And hopping fans just show up without emotional attachment rarely works. Which brings everything full circle. Because this isn't just about Unrivaled anymore. It's about the future of women's basketball as a business. And what happens next will determine whether this recent surge was the beginning of something sustainable, or just a moment that peaked too fast. At this point, the picture is clear. The hype, the headlines, the record-breaking moments, they were real. But so is the slowdown happening now. And that's what makes this moment so important for the future of women's basketball. Unrivaled struggles didn't happen in isolation. They exposed a deeper issue. Growth driven by one massive star can be explosive, but it can also be fragile if the system isn't built to support what comes next. When Caitlin Clark stepped onto the national stage, she brought millions of new eyes with her. But the real challenge was always going to be what happens after that wave passes. And now that test has arrived. Leagues can't rely on lightning striking twice. They have to create environments where new stars can rise, where storylines are built, and where fans feel emotionally connected beyond just one name. That's the difference between a viral moment and a sustainable movement. For Unrivaled, the pressure is immediate. Ratings need to stabilize. Trust with fans needs to be rebuilt. And the league has to prove it can stand on its own without leaning on speculation or hype tied to players who aren't even on the roster. For the WNBA, the lesson is just as important. The Clark era showed what's possible. It showed how big the ceiling really is. But it also showed how quickly momentum can dip when the spotlight shifts. So the real question is whether Caitlin Clark changed the game. She already did. The real question is whether the leagues around her can evolve fast enough to keep the audience she helped bring in. Because if they get this right, women's basketball could enter its strongest era ever. But if they do, this recent surge might be remembered as a moment of potential that never fully turned into permanence. And that decision is being made right now. Now everything comes down to what Unrivaled and the WNBA decide to do next. Because this moment isn't just about falling numbers or one rough season. It's about whether women's basketball can turn a historic surge into something permanent, or if this wave slowly fades away. Right now, Unrivaled is under real pressure. Reports suggest broadcast partners are watching performance closely. Sponsors want proof of long-term value. Fans want honesty instead of hype. And players want stability. That's a lot riding on one young league trying to find its identity. If Unrivaled can adjust its strategy, rebuild trust with fans, and develop new breakout stars that casual viewers actually connect with, there's still a path forward. But if the league keeps leaning on marketing tricks and vague hype without delivering must-watch moments, the situation could get worse fast. And the WNBA isn't off the hook either. Caitlin Clark showed the ceiling. She proved women's basketball can pull mainstream audiences, dominate sports headlines, and compete for attention in a crowded media landscape. But relying on one superstar isn't a long-term plan. The next step has to be building systems that create multiple stars, consistent storylines, and year-round engagement. Because the truth is simple. Fans don't just want games. They want narratives. They want rivalries. They want personalities they can follow and argue about. And when that emotional connection disappears, so does the casual audience. That's why this moment feels bigger than just Unrivaled's ratings or one season's numbers. It's a turning point. Either the leagues adapt and grow smarter about how they attract fans, or they risk watching this momentum slowly slip away. So the question now is whether Caitlin Clark changed the game. That part is already written. The real question is whether women's basketball can build something strong enough to survive without leaning on her name every time viewership starts falling. Because what happens next will decide if this era becomes the foundation of something lasting, or just another missed opportunity.